Welcome to Sword and Shield, the official podcast of the 960th Cyberspace Wing. Join us for insight, knowledge, mentorship, and some fun as we discuss relevant topics in and around our wing. Please understand that the views expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the views of the U.S. Air Force nor the Air Force Reserve, and no endorsement of any particular person or business is ever intended.
Welcome to episode 3 of the Sword and Shield podcast. I'm Colonel Rick Erredge, and today I'm joined by
Chief Master Sgt. Chris Howard.
Thanks, Chief, and I'm glad to be back with you again to have our next discussion.
Same here, sir.
We're getting some great feedback out there. Keep it coming, and we wanted to spend some more time and do another episode on the finer points of development and promotion that we talked about last episode. And we're going to try something new here. We're going to use a keyword somewhere within this podcast. And once you hear that, you'll have instructions on what to do with that keyword. And we're going to do a random drawing of all the people that successfully follow the instructions and have the right keyword. And we'll draw someone that's going to be able to get a 2-hour pass to use on the UTA, subject to your supervisor's approval still. You can't flash it like a Monopoly get out of jail card, but it will be an opportunity for somebody to listen to the podcast and hopefully enjoy it, and then get an opportunity to be incentivized and rewarded for it.
I think that sounds exciting, sir.
That's excellent. All right, so we're going to jump right into it here. I know we talked a lot about the nuts and bolts last episode about enlisted promotion. You can find a lot of those rules and information in the AFI. We're going to talk more of the finer points and some of the expectations that we think that really help people be prepared and be ready when it's your time.
Right. I think setting expectations in the beginning, much like when we're talking about a performance report cycle, is very important. You know, we use ACAs, but even when we're talking about development, leadership and supervisors really need to lay out what some of those expectations are. So it kind of leads me into, what are some of your expectations, sir, of your senior enlisted leadership?
Yeah, great question. And I think I'm going to talk about it in general terms. I expect the same things from our enlisted leaders as I do our officers and our civilian employees as well. And first and foremost, again, we talked a little bit about it last time, but it's performance, right? The reason we're here is to do a mission, and that mission is performing. And under that performance umbrella, there's a lot of different things. And that includes being a good teammate,
right?
And being a leader to lead at your level. It's really important to find a way to lead. And sometimes leading is by following too, and getting out of the way.
Yes, sir.
I expect folks to take initiative, find opportunities to improve processes and innovate. And hopefully you're given enough space to do that. And we're really working on that and trying to change the culture in the Air Force to be more receptive to risk taking. And frankly, just, we should be allowed to fail and pick up pieces and put it back together and try different.
Yes, sir. I mean, yeah, I think that's a key piece there, right? We talk about failure, and, our arena, we don't like to use the term failure, right? We can make mistakes and we can learn from them, but we want to give enough space that we can control what that looks like, as well as making sure that we recover quickly, right? Some of the issues is just fail and forget is just a complete failure. Idea that doesn't meet the mark, which can be considered a failure, but we learn from it and are able to move past it and take that feedback to improve the process or improve the action. That's not a true failure. That's a learning point, right?
Yeah, I think it's exciting too, as I'm hearing our senior leaders talk about risk taking and allowing us to have that space to do that. So I think we need to continue to push that and try to change that culture to make us more an effective fighting force.
Yes, sir. A lot of times when I was growing up as a young enlisted member, I heard the term fire and forget type of airman, right? And we've used that term in a number of things. And what does that really mean in this kind of context? A lot of times as leaders, we want an end result. So I want X, I want Y, I want Z. And a fire and forget airman is one of those individuals. I can give you what that end result is, what I'm looking for, and you go off and conquer it. You're going to have those trials and tribulations. You may fail at an option. You may be able to learn from a couple of pieces, but I'm not breaking that down and giving you every single step. I'm not laying it out to the point where I'm basically doing it for you. I'm giving you the end result. You're going out and conquering. That's that risk space, right? That's the decision-making space that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think there's different levels of failure in times, right? And as a supervisor, we expect you to engage, understand when there's more space and more risk to be taken by somebody, and really letting them do the job and just letting them figure out how to do it and meeting your intent. And there's other times when we deal with people, we probably need to be a little tighter with what we're doing to make sure there's less risk to be taken there when we're talking about managing people and families. We got to be a little closer with what's going on.
Right. No, great point. One of the things that I always keep with me personally is I actually failed my CDCs the first time I tested. And my commander brought me in and said, Chris, it looks like you dropped the ball. Right. What happened? We talked about some of the situations at the time, and he goes, you know what? I'm going to dust you off. I'm going to hand you the football, and I want you to take it across the goal line. And that was inspirational to me. Right. Here I am expecting as a young airman. I failed at my job because my job was to prepare for that CDC test. It was to learn my job's skill set. And here's an indicator that I just could not do it. And my commander didn't chew me out. He didn't, beat me up about it. He already could see that I was beating myself up about it. So he picked me up, dusted me off, handed me the ball, and told me to go with it. So, we all go through it, sir.
And we all have those opportunities to excel, is what I was always told as lieutenant and captain.
Yes, sir.
And again, different grades, different expectations, different experiences, different expectations. And as a supervisor and a leader, we expect you to kind of be engaged in those folks' lives and understand when they need more and less. Right. So that's a big expectation I talk about. And finally, I'll leave you with, I really believe there's only two things in life you can control, and that is your attitude and your effort.
That's right.
And that equals performance. So if you have a great attitude and you work really hard at it, great things are going to happen. And that means you're using the people around you, you're using your resources that you have. And if you don't have those people or resources around you that you need, the expectation again is to seek help and try to find those resources and use the tools, systems, and institutional processes that we have in order to do that.
Yes, sir.
So I'd like to shift gears now and ask you a question. Last time we talked a lot of professional things, but let's talk a little bit about on the personal development side. When's the right time to apply for PME, for enlisted PME specifically?
Yes, sir. So, there's a couple of schools of thought when we were looking at this. The timelines really are fairly short between one rank to the next rank, right? Predominantly 2 years to 18 months. A lot of the PME cycles, when we talk about correspondence, can take up to 18 months. The longer you forego signing up for that PME only extends out your capability of potentially promoting. Right? When you move into a staff sergeant role and then into tech sergeant role, have you completed NCOA? You really want to focus on getting to that fairly quickly, right? Maybe not first day that you put on that stripe, but within a couple of months, I would say is the prime window. Get the stripe on, get yourself settled, get your head wrapped around your new role, your new responsibilities, and then step forward and take on the PME. Two reasons. One is the timelines. You don't want to be your own worst enemy by not completing it and then eliminate a potential promotion or at least a potential opportunity for promotion. One of the other pieces of that is if we get it done fairly quickly and we hit that window. Let's say that you walked in the door, you've knocked out NCOA within you've signed up within the first couple months of being a tech sergeant or staff sergeant, and you're ready to go. And then you meet the gates for time and grade, time and service. It doesn't mean poof, I'm ready for the next rank, right? But getting to the PME early does two things for you. It helps develop you as far as the theoretical side of leadership of that tier, of those ranks. And then it also tells leadership that you're serious about your professional military career, and that you're putting forth the effort and the education that's been set out in front of you. Senior NCOA is a big one, right? That tends to be one of the biggest laggers that we have within the enlisted promotion cycle. People could wait 2-5 years sometimes. And that it depends on the personal side of the house. But what it really does is it starts to stifle some of those opportunities past master, right? When you're looking for that senior stripe, you're just not going to have those opportunities without actually having senior NCOA done. The other drawback is there's some myths out there that in residence is better than by correspondence. There are some good arguments to be made that in residence is a better from a networking capability, an applicable application from the school itself, that it may be a little bit easier in some cases. But the reality is that you get some tangible items out of it, but by waiting because of the cycle and the availability of seats, you're actually doing yourself a disservice by waiting too long. What I personally advocate to my enlisted airmen is I want you to do the correspondence so that we can get that taken care of, right? That doesn't mean I cannot fight for a seat for you to do it in residence as well. Double down, learn a little bit more, take the opportunity to actually go to the class, but don't put yourself behind the eight ball or at a disadvantage by not completing that.
I think that's great. Great advice. When I was a young captain, Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Weaver told me, how come I hadn't applied for SOS by correspondence yet? And he just pinned me on like a month, and I wasn't even thinking about it. Right. But what that taught me was you never know what's going to happen. You should always be prepared for every door that's going to open. And by taking care of your PME early and often, then you know that you're ready. Maybe you're not personally ready, but somebody maybe thinks you're ready and they're ready to push you. And maybe you don't think you're going to pursue something in the future. Maybe life's changes. I had one very good friend of mine who was going to retire as lieutenant colonel, AGR, wasn't going to do his Air War college, happily married. Daughter was going to get ready to graduate high school, ends up in a divorce situation. Now he wants to try to make 06, doesn't have enough time to do his Air War college. Right. Daughter says, I'm going to college out of state. So there's no reason for him to stay there. He put himself in a position where he didn't have the flexibility to continue his career. And that's what I want to tell our enlisted folks too, is enroll in your PME right away, knock it out, get it done. And if you believe and leadership thinks that experience in residence is really important for you, then do them both.
Right.
I mean, I did them both. I did SOS correspondence and in residence. And I did senior development education, correspondence, and residence, and they were completely different experiences for me. And I learned in both environments.
No, completely understand. I think COVID is a good example of why waiting for those opportunities is problematic as well. If we were waiting for courses, all these courses started going away. We're having to put in waivers for people to actually execute or to be able to promote because they weren't able to take the test. If we wait too long, you don't know what the environment's going to change up. I hate to make it seem like it's box checking, because it's not. It's something that you're definitely going to learn from. But without having that opportunity could be very a distance. And in certain cases, we can all come up with an example of where one of our stellar airmen, I was ready to move them forward, and I just couldn't because they didn't have it done. And now they're not even enrolled. So this window where I can hire for this position may only be for a month. You're not going to get senior NCOA knocked out in a month. I mean, you might, but you're really not learning. You're cramming, right? And you're trying to do your best. And I don't advocate for that by any means, but that's almost a bridge too far in most cases.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, make sure you're ready as an individual. And I think so you bring up a good point about the box checking. We hear that a lot on the officer side. The institution believes that PME is important.
Yes.
So we believe PME is important, and we believe that you do learn things from it. Whether, I know Air War College for me was super painful, but when I went into residence, I reached back on that learning that I had and was able to pull that forward into what I'm doing now.
Right. No, and when I can bring up a number of examples where when we talk about inclination in PME specifically, I've leveraged the matrix that I was taught in ALS and NCOA and senior NCO a number of times of where they are sitting as far as those boxes, right? Are they inclined? Are they knowledgeable? Are they engaged? And what kind of skill set as a leader I have to use, whether it's coaching, whether it's, being more demanding as a leader.
All right, so we're gonna take a quick shift gears here, and our public affairs officer Samantha is going to share with you the key word for us to. So here's what we need you to do, and Sam's going to tell you. Sam, over to you.
Thanks, Colonel Erredge. So what y'all are going to do is you're going to submit the key word, which is gladiator, to the 960th government org box, which that email address is 960cw.pa.us.af.mil. That email address is in the global. If you just look for 960cw/PA, it should come right up. The other way you can submit for the keyword is to go to the AF Connect app. So if you add 960th as a favorite, you can go to the function called Share Your Thoughts. Make sure you fill in the optional blocks, just because we need to know who you are so you can get your reward. And all submissions are due by Sunday of the July UTA. So that means I will take submissions up till midnight. Thank you, and back to you, Colonel Erredge and Chief Howard.
And then we're going to do a random drawing for everybody that answered the keyword correctly, and then we'll share that. With everybody about who the winner was, and then you can present that 2-hour pass to your supervisor to use at you and your supervisor's discretion.
Awesome. And if I can, I want to take a moment to thank Sam as being our audio engineer and having to kind of listen to us on a regular basis. She makes a lot of this happen for us. So thank you, Sam. And thanks for being part of this.
And producer and executive producer and editor and director. And all we do is we walk in here, sit down and start talking, and we get up and leave, and she makes all the magic happen. So, all right, Chief, we're reaching towards the end of the podcast again, but I do want to address one other topic, and I want your thoughts on where some of our enlisted folks should think about fitting in their civilian education, and or how the CCAF kind of fits into their overall personal and professional development.
Right. So over the years, we've had a back and forth when it comes to the CCAF specifically, right? Why is it important? Why is it not important? How does that rack and stack with the civilian education? Well, I already have a bachelor's. I already have a master's. Why do I need a CCAF? The mentorship that I always got over the years was the CCAF is not about the education. It is partially about the education. That's why it's accredited. That's why, Air Universities spend so much time with it. But it's also specifically meant that you're taking the time to add a little bit of education towards your career. Each one of those CCAFs that you receive is based on your AFSC and that skill set. So the CCAF is really about taking the time to refine your knowledge in your career field and be part of a little bit more of moving the ball in that particular arena and being that SME. Where that rolls in with your civilian education is also a starting point. For a young airman who might not have decided to go to college right out the gate for whatever reason, personal, financial, whatever it is, at least it gets you the starter road, right? So it's kind of that gateway drug towards civilian education, as they would say. It's supposed to spur the idea and the love of knowledge. The Air Force really encapsulates the fact that we want to be very knowledgeable. We want to be highly technical. And one of the ways that we use that in the continuum of education and learning is not just the OJT, not just the hands-on piece, not just the CFETP items that we have to learn, but then on top of that, the extended learning for critical thinking. When we talk about college, why is college important? It comes to the critical thinking thinking piece, right? We teach very technical skill sets. We teach very checklist-oriented skill sets, and we teach individuals to know what's in this book. By doing a multi-set classroom environment or some of these other things required with the CCF and then into your bachelor's and master's degrees and doctorates for some of those, is that critical thinking, being able to correlate multiple items from different genres and pull it all together, sir.
Yeah, that's great. And I really do believe that everybody takes their own path, and that path is completely fine, right? They need to find what works for them and when the right time is for them in their life. And it's going to be different for everybody, but the continuum of learning you talked about is really important.
Yes,
and clearly what we're expecting out of our airmen today is much different than when I joined the Air Force 26 years ago. It was just, get your CDCs, get your upgrade training, and then get a CCF.
Right.
That was it.
Right. It was kind of almost box checking. And then as we transitioned from old school performance and old school thought, that well-rounded airman, the whole airman concept really comes into play. And that's where the CCAF thought process and the learning continuum has changed. We're no longer just about a box. Here's the minimums. The idea is consistency and the continuum of learning there, sir. And
the other thing that you nailed, I think, is really, really important is the critical thinking.
Yes, sir.
And we're so lean right now, and so many people are the one program manager or the one SME for their program that we expect people to think really hard about it and apply problem-solving techniques and tools. And you get a lot of that, and you get that broad education through a number of venues, and some of that CCF, some of that is personal experience, some of that is your mentoring, and some of that is some civilian education.
Sure.
And our institution is set up to really support people with tuition assistance. And right now, too, there's a number of organizations that are doing scholarships for military people, and there's a lot of resources out there for people that maybe want to do it, but have different roadblocks.
Right. Well, there's different programs, scholarships, like you said, Air Force Cool. There's ways of testing out based on your CFETP as well. Some of it requires some of your own money, but there's a lot of free teaching out there. LinkedIn is another example of some places. There's a number of certifications, especially in cyber, not just from a cyber perspective, but leadership and development, human resources for leaders. It's almost like the Wild Wild West of opportunities out there,
It's really great right now. There's tons of those opportunities. And to kind of wrap it all up, I guess my final expectation is that we expect people to invest in themselves. And some of that is through what the institution of the Air Force provides, and some of that is personal development and finding their way. And we really want to encourage that. And especially as traditional reservists, we don't have touch points with everybody all the time. And so trying to keep people engaged on investing in themselves, physically and mentally through any of these avenues is really important in their development and really shows a well-rounded, whole airman.
Yes, sir. And the commitment to the mission and commitment to themselves.
Yeah. And I think the more educated you are, the better the organization gets and becomes and can stay focused on really mission accomplishment.
Yes, sir.
All right, Chief, do you have any, I'm going to leave you with final parts for this episode.
Copy. All I'd like to leave it with is remember that this is a continuum, right? And it's not linear. It's not one path. It's not one way. It's not going to be the same for everybody. We all have our own story. We all have our own pathway. And we're going to have to take different forks in the road to get to where we're going to get to in the end, right? Sometimes it's about balancing what your goal is with what the unit's goal or the Air Force goal for you. A lot of times you can find correlations there to get to where you want to be. But don't be afraid, right? Talk to a mentor, talk to your leadership, talk to your friend about some of the options you might have, and find what pathway works best for you, your family, and then coincides with what your goals might be militarily. So that's all I really had, sir.
All right, excellent. And we'll be back with episode 4 next week.
Yeah, look forward to it, sir.